Lovely. Well, good evening, everybody. Hello, Jeremy. Welcome.
Hello. Hi.
Just going to wait for, we've just opened the waiting room, so we'll wait for the floodgates to open and let everyone in, and then we will make a start. So evening to those who've just joined. My name's Opal Fruits. Yes, made to make your mouth or your eyes water. You can choose. It really is one of those nights. Are we okay to start? We got people in?
Yeah.
Lovely, right. So welcome to another In Conversation With. Tonight we're joined by the one and only, it's Jeremy Miles. Now I have to say, it's Labour candidate for Neath. I can't say it's Senedd member anymore, can I, at the moment?
No, you can't.
No,
So
you've been...
Labour, Welsh Labour and cooperative candidate for Neath.
Cooperative. I'll have to sack Ash because he didn't write that on the cue card for. So, Jeremy, it's lovely to have you here. Don't forget, boys and girls, if you're watching at home and you've got a question you'd like to put to Jeremy, you can write it in our question and answer section on the Zoom app and send that through. And a little bit later on, we will be putting those questions to Jeremy. So try and be nice or try not be nice. It's entirely. How's it been, Jeremy? How's it been today?
Today's been good. I've been doing some video stuff in the constituency to get onto Facebook and social media for the campaign. So been doing lots of that and getting lots of leaflets out to people just to kind of try and maximise as much contact as we can with people. You know, it's a really kind of weird time, isn't it? So running a campaign in the middle of it all is quite bizarre, really. But I think we had a good manifesto launch today, so really pleased about that.
Yes, well, we've got a couple of questions about that later on.
Okay.
So don't peek too soon. So yeah, boys and girls, if you've got a question you'd like to put to Jeremy, something that I'm not asking and you would like the answer to, just write it in the question answers and we will get on to that. But we will start, Jeremy, first of all, with a quick fire round, 10 quick questions, just to get to know you a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
I can't have any hesitation for these answers. You just need to give me the answer straight away, okay?
Okay.
So the first question, you look nervous.
I'm a little bit nervous.
The first question is, cookies or cake?
Cake.
Cats or dogs?
Dogs.
Tea or coffee?
Coffee. Morning
or winter?
Morning or winter?
No. Morning or evening? Sorry, I've gone down the line. I do apologise.
Evening, I guess. Yeah.
Summer or winter? There we
are. Definitely summer.
The theatre or cinema?
Cinema.
Books or movies?
Books.
Comedies or horrors?
Comedies, definitely.
Superman or Batman?
Ooh.
Or neither?
Oh, no. I'm frankly happy to settle for one of them. I think Henry Cavill's Superman, probably.
Lovely, very good choice. Fruit or vegetables?
Fruit.
Gin or Sauvignon Blanc?
Do you have to choose? This is unfair. Gin. If I had to choose, I'd choose gin.
You could put them both in the same glass if you wanted. We'd state you're judging, but that's fine. And the last one is McDonald's or Burger King?
Burger King.
Really? That is interesting. Most people go for McDonald's.
Well, But I'm blowing my own ferro here.
So thank you for those quick questions. Just a little bit of icebreaker to in gently. So the first I got for you, Jeremy, is obviously you're from Neath. You grew up in Neath. What was your favourite subject at school?
Well, I actually went to school in Neath, but I grew up in somewhere outside Neath called Ponadylais. So I went to Welsh language comprehensive school. So in those days, there weren't as many as there are now. So you had to travel quite a long way. So I used to get a bus every morning for about 45 minutes to go to school in the Swansea Valley, which is where I also live now. My favourite subject at school probably would have been history, I think, with probably Welsh literature as a close second, I think. But I loved history, really, because I think in a way it was, a lot of that is about politics, isn't it, really? So I really enjoyed that. So that's probably my top subject.
History. When was the Battle of Hastings? Here we go, we'll test him now.
1066.
And when did the Falklands War start?
1982.
Oh, well done. I only know that because I saw it on The Circle the other night. But well done on your history knowledge. So tell me then, what was it like growing up as an LGBT person in that area?
Well, I guess I decided that I was gay probably in my, when I was about kind of 11 or 12, I think. So I don't know, I think it felt very kind of lonely, I guess, because obviously that isn't something which, certainly when I was 11 or 12, wasn't any kind of, TV role models or any kind of anywhere in your life did you have any reflection of LGBT life. So it felt lonely, basically. And I really wished that I wasn't gay for a long time, which I think is a reasonably common experience, or certainly was probably reasonably common for men of my age, perhaps. So, and in school, I didn't come out at all. And actually, a couple of friends of mine from school subsequently also came out, so which is obviously nice. But yeah, so I didn't tell anybody until I got to university, really, which is, that's not a great way, frankly, of being young and being a teenager and going through your school journey. So I'm actually, we may come on and talk about this, but that's why I was so passionate about making sure that the new curriculum that we will have in Wales, reflected the full diversity of identities that we have, so that people, young gay kids or LGBT kids, going through a school journey, don't have to have that experience, really, that they can see reflected back at them, in the curriculum and in the way they're taught the full range of identities, including their own. So I think that's really important.
Yeah, and that's very important. So you touched on there that you came out when you were university. Where did you go to university to?
I went to university, to Oxford University, and I studied law there. And I kind of, I was the first person in my family to go to university, and nobody else had. So it was all sort of, all new in a sense. And I didn't know anybody who'd gone to Oxford University apart from a bloke in my school in the year above, who was the first person I think the school had ever sent to Oxford University. So it was all kind of new as well. And I actually decided probably about a year in that I had made a big, terrible mistake, and that I wasn't up to it, really, and I couldn't, I wouldn't succeed, which I think, again, is, probably related in some way to the kind of gay experience, really. And I was really quite determined to leave, basically, and come back to Wales, go to university here. But basically, I stuck with it, and that was, for me, that was the right thing to do, basically. But yeah, it was a sort of choppy start, but I really enjoyed, actually, my university years. Yeah.
That's good. So your favourite subject in school was history, then you went to law. What was your first job?
Well, my first paid employment of any sort was working in the garden centre in Leeks in Cross Hands, which I started doing when I was in sixth form and carried on doing till I left university, which is fantastic because you could spend the whole summer, lugging concrete blocks outside in the sun and getting a bit of a tan and having a nice time. So I did that every vacation. But my first professional job after I left university was I went to teach law at the University of Warsaw in Poland, which I did straight after graduating, and I did that for a year. And I was teaching, it was just after the Berlin Wall had come down, but a bit after, about 3 years after that. So it was all very kind of, very sort of, it was a time of great change, if you like, in Poland and Eastern Europe generally. So it was fascinating, actually. So I did that for a year, but decided really that I didn't want to teach, basically. So came back to the UK after that and qualified as a solicitor.
Sorry, if you're wondering why I'm laughing, I've just got a new puppy last week, and he's managed to get himself trapped under the sofa. So that's why.
What kind of puppy is it?
I've got a little dash hound.
Oh, lovely.
Well, he's not lovely.
I'm glad I got the dog and cat question right then.
He can't sleep where you tell him, and he doesn't know where to go to the toilet properly. But apart from that, he's lovely. So if you hear some barking, he's currently under the sofa. So did you ever think then that growing up that you would be a politician, or did you want to be a politician?
Yes, I did, is the honest answer. That's quite an unfashionable answer to give, really, isn't it? But I did really, or at least that I thought I wanted to be, is the truth. So I didn't obviously know that I would be, obviously. But so in my own, neither of my parents were particularly political, but both my grandfathers were very political, both Labour councillors. So when I was growing up as a kid, there was, politics was part of the kind of family discussion, really. My parents, as I say, weren't particularly political, but it was part of the kind of whole kind of family discussion. So I always had, at an early age, really had quite a clear sense that, political activity and political work, if you like, was capable of doing good things, in a very simple way. So, and that really appealed to me, because I would hear my grandparents, particularly on my mother's side, talking about, my grandfather had been a councillor for 40 years probably, so talking about all the things that he had worked to campaign to get for the village. And if you're talking about being a councillor in the 50s and 60s, they're quite basic things like a library, a surgery for the doctor, so really kind of core things for a community. And I remember being kind of excited by the idea of that, really. So in that way, I did have that sort of kind of ambition, if you like. But it obviously took a while. And I joined the Labour Party when I was 16 or 17, I think I would have been, partly as a consequence. And again, this is quite common, I think, for people who are roughly my age, partly as a consequence of the miners' strike. Although I was a bit younger than that at the time, it was very clear in my school, which was the top of the Swansea Valley, where there were kids coming from all over, from Gower to the top of the Amman Valley. So some kids, obviously, their dads were underground, and some kids, their parents were doing a range of other things. So you could definitely see during the strike on the yard how that was affecting people, basically, in terms of how they were. So, and that really kind of politicised me, I suppose.
Yeah, fab. So going into politics, did you see being LGBT plus as a barrier?
No, I don't think I saw it as a barrier, but I guess there's two aspects to that, really. One is, was it in fact a barrier? And I think in a way it was more of an internal barrier than an external barrier, if I can put it like that. So I definitely think that had I suppose, who knows, I guess, but I have a sense at least that I waited longer perhaps to make the move into a political vocation than I might have done if I wasn't gay, just because I think that, being gay causes you, or certainly caused me, makes you feel you've got to negotiate your place in the world in many, many ways, really. And sometimes that comes with questions about whether you're up to it. Do I fit in here? Could I really do it? I can't really see myself being reflected back at me in that world. Maybe I'm, not up to it. So all those things are, I think, part and parcel, I suspect, for most LGBT people's journey through life at some point. And I think as a consequence of that, I probably concluded at somewhere in my mind that it probably wasn't something I would flourish in doing, and probably left it a bit later than I would have otherwise done. Although I'm really grateful to have done that, as it happens, because I think it's given me a different journey, which I think has been a valuable journey. So in that sense, I think it was probably an internal barrier. I don't think, apart from on one occasion, that I really, I have to say, this is I'm not suggesting this is representative, but I don't myself think that I experienced any overt homophobia in the process of becoming elected, if you like.
Yeah.
Apart from on one occasion when I was being in a candidate selection, when one of my opponents went round all the other members saying, "You do know he's gay, don't you?" sort of thing, which effectively wasn't a candidate, it was somebody who was working for them. So that's obviously very clearly very unpleasant, and obviously completely unacceptable, given the purpose it was being put to. But anyway, so I think there's a mix of things, but I think other people have had a more difficult journey in that way.
Yeah, no, that does sound bad if someone is doing that just to try and gain some points. But obviously nowadays we hopefully haven't got any issues like that. So I have a question. Now you can answer this if you want, or you can choose not to answer it. But the question is, do you have any hidden talents or any party tricks?
Do I have any hidden talents? What do I think? Do I have any hidden talents? Depressing, I probably don't. I think this is what you see is what you get on some level, really. So I used to play in a brass band, so probably that's more hidden because I haven't done it for a long time, really. But I used to play like a small tuba. It's called a euphonium.
Yeah.
Which is actually great because I actually went to Australia with the West Glamorgan Youth Brass Band, which was the first time I'd been abroad when I was a kid, so that was amazing. But yeah, I guess that would be an incredibly hidden talent.
Well, I tell you what, as soon as lockdown's over, me, you, bottle of vodka in the euphonia.
I've been known to do a bit of mean karaoke, by the way, so if you're up for that.
Oh, well, tell you what, I do like going to, obviously I'm from Cardiff, so I usually go to the Golden Cross on a Wednesday with Wyburn and Wayne. And tell you what, I'll meet you there.
I did have a terrible experience in the King's karaoke where I chose a song that absolutely nobody knew apart from one other person and had to basically perform it to a room full of people going, what the hell is he doing? So that's, choose your track, I think, haven't you?
Well, do you know what? When I do karaoke, I always just go, do you know what? You choose something for me, and I let just choose something for me. I'll sing it, and then you end up singing something completely random, and you sat there going, "Why did I just agree to that?" But I think that's what the fun about karaoke is, isn't it? But I do want to, when lockdown's over, we will arrange a little karaoke session.
Really?
So, Jeremy, tell me, what do you think is the main challenge facing our community today?
Well, I think there's a long way to go, isn't it? Really, I think we've achieved a lot in terms of the recognition of legal rights for most parts of our communities. I think our trans community would say differently, and I think there's an awful lot longer to go in the journey of getting equality for our trans colleagues. And I think it's incumbent on us, actually, and I feel this very strongly myself, from somebody who's, I feel benefited really from people who've gone before us, if you like, standing up and winning the rights which I enjoy. I think it's incumbent on us who are in that position to do what we can to continue that fight, if you like, for equality for all parts of our LGBT family. So I think that is, but I do think we have made a lot of progress in terms of legal rights. But myself, and I think this is sometimes an unfashionable view, I actually think very strongly we've got an awful long way to go to making that a reality in people's lives. So the laws have been changed, and that's a really good thing, and that's our job as politicians. But can we honestly say that we've won the battle of people's hearts as well? I think there's an awful lot longer to go in that battle. And I think that feels like sometimes like an odd thing to say, because we do see so much more positive representation around us. But I was just very struck, actually, just to go back to the point I made earlier around the LGBT inclusive curriculum. You'd still be having conversations with people who would otherwise, you'd think pretty sound, if you like, on issues to do with LGBT, where, clearly the idea of having a properly inclusive curriculum for kids going through school, causes a bit of a pause and a think. And what that tells me is people are on the journey, but we've got quite a long way to go in that journey, really. So I think that's the kind of big picture. I mean, there are some very specific challenges, obviously, and I think, one of the things I'm most kind of exercised by, if you like, is there's like a whole generation of people who've, got their rights. I mean, as I say, it is not a whole generation. As I say, there's still battles to be fought and won. But the picture for most people in the LGBT community has moved on a lot. But actually, for example, older LGBT people, our public services, for example, probably have a lot to learn in terms of how to make sure that services are provided in a way which reflects the diversity of older LGBT experiences. Yeah. And so, that's just practical stuff about how you change things for the better, really. So I do think there's a lot. There are lots of challenges that lie ahead.
Yeah. So if you've had, say, you've had a bad day, where would you go? Where's your happy place? Where do you go to relax and chill out?
Well, I mean, I guess. In what do you mean now?
So, like, if you say, for example, like you wanted to get away and you just wanted to go somewhere, and it makes you, when you're there, it makes you happy. Like, I go down to Treco Bay, Porthcawl, or somewhere like
a physical place. Okay.
Where?
So, so near where I live in the Swansea Valley, in the constituency, I live behind. There's a mountain behind me, basically, and in the times when we were, going back and forth a bit more than we are now, coming back on after a Thursday when most of the assembly related work or the government related work, in Cardiff had been done, and then the Friday and the rest of the weekend was all in the constituency. Coming over the mountain, especially in the summer, I'm just very fortunate. There's a fantastic view, basically, and I would always feel, you could just feel your kind of concerns lifting, basically, because you just had this amazing kind of countryside spread out in front of you. So that is really, really very good for the soul, really. But if I had a choice of anywhere to be, if I needed to be unwinding and distance was no object, I am always very happy sitting on a little square in some city in southern Spain, having a glass of red wine. So I think that's as near as it gets to, a very happy place.
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment, and probably not for some time, I don't think, but there we go.
I've got 2 booked for November, so...
Okay, I shouldn't say not for some time, but there we are.
So, what is your biggest achievement, either politically or as a person?
Oh gosh, I should have predicted this one coming up, shouldn't I, really? What was my biggest achievement? I'm not sure I know, really. I think that as a person, in the context of being a gay man, I think that, coming out to my parents is incredibly difficult. Yeah. Which is obviously a very common experience, unfortunately. But I was reflecting the other day that this is 25 years ago, probably, so quite some time ago, that I now have a relationship with them which is completely open about, the full extent of my life and my sexuality and so on, in a way which is completely unstressful, I think, for both of us. And I think on a kind of personal level, I wouldn't probably have said that would have happened at the time. So I do sort of think that very strongly. I think as you get older, you also start thinking about that in a different context with your parents as well. So I think that was a very kind of powerful thing, really, on a personal level. On a kind of political level, I'm not sure that I think there are accomplishments still to come, really, and that's, I think, the right way of looking at political work and political endeavour. It's not about what you've been able to do, it's what's left to do, really. And so I think about that. Since I got elected, in terms of political action, if you like, I'm immensely proud that the Welsh Labour government, made the statement that I was able to put my name to, which I think was a real, I'm extremely pleased about this, which was the statement of support for the trans community, where we said, we as a government fully supported full equality, full self-identification, and the trans men and men, trans women and women. I feel myself that was a very positive thing for the government to have said, and I was very pleased to have had a part in that. So I'm very proud of that. And when Hannah Blyther and I were elected, we were both very, had as a priority, really, working on the agenda around homophobic bullying in particular in schools, and the idea of an LGBT inclusive curriculum around RSE. And so neither of those two things were my accomplishments, but I'm absolutely chuffed that the government did that, since it was something that we were pressing from the start, really. So I think those are important accomplishments, not my own accomplishments, but things I'm proud of.
Yeah, well, thank you. Just to let you know as well, if you're watching at home, don't forget, if you have a question you want to put to Jeremy, please send it. We've had a couple in, so if you want to send some more in, please do. Jeremy, do you have any advice for anyone who's LGBT plus on standing to become a politician? Or
yes, I do actually, and the simple advice is do it. So I think each individual's journey is different, isn't it? Really, so. And as I say, I do think my own sort of journey probably was, held back. It's probably too big a term, really, but it delayed, if you like, by that sense of, am I up to it? And I think you have to confront that, really, because generally speaking, the answer is yes, you are up to it. But I also think that we shouldn't just see it in that negative way. I think that if your life experience, in whatever context really, but it's definitely true for many LGBT people at least, if your life experience has been one of questioning your place in the world, carving out your own path, having to have difficult conversations with people who you love, perhaps at an early age, having to re-establish your identity on a daily basis in different settings, checking your sense of sometimes inferiority, all those things which are complex emotions. I think if you're a person who's negotiated all that complex emotional stuff, you definitely have something to offer.
Yeah.
You definitely have something to offer a world of politics which shouldn't be about kind of machismo. It should be about, reflective people bringing their own experience and getting things changed. And so it's not just, am I up to it? I think there's a positive thing that you bring to the table if you've had that experience. It isn't obviously an experience which is, just an LGBT experience, but I think many of us will have had that experience, and I think it's really important. Yeah. And also, we do need more people who are out in public life and in political life. We've obviously got 3 out members of the Senedd, of the outgoing Senedd, at least, who knows what the new Senedd will look like. And I think it does make a difference. I think as a party, I think I'm right in saying that I can't now recall if I'm honest, but our manifesto for the Senedd elections, for the last Senedd elections, I think didn't have any explicit LGBT commitments. It had other commitments which were obviously good for LGBT people, and I think, you compare that with 5 years later, where we've made some progress. I mean, there's obviously further to go, but we've made some progress. And that's, I think, because you've got people in frontline politics who are out, basically, I think it does make a bit of a difference. But I would say, sorry, Opal, I'm going on a bit, but I would say it isn't just enough to be gay in public life. So it's not a tick box exercise where you go, oh, there we go, we've got, you've got to do something with it, basically. And the visibility isn't even enough, actually, although it is, some contribution. I think you've got to also be finding opportunities to try and change things, even at the margins, really.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I was speaking, obviously, before I was telling you earlier on, I was at an event with Lisa Nandy, as a virtual event the other day, and she said that she would support Opal Fruits for MP. So we're going.
Where do we sign up?
So again, Jeremy, you can answer this question or you can refuse to answer this question if you want to.
When you say that, it just makes me go, oh my God, what's coming? So
the question is, what was the last text message you sent? I can tell you mine if you want. Mine was, we should be done by 8:30. We'll order the Dom then.
Actually, it was a political text message to my predecessor as the Assembly member for Neath, who had given me a fantastic idea to write to voters over 70 in my constituency, and the letters went out today, and I texted to tell her that. So, that's probably not the kind of salacious insight that you were looking for, Opal, but we're in the middle of the campaign.
What's your gossip? Last week, Hannah refused to answer that question, Steve.
Well, that's much more exciting.
So I'm that. Oh, so, but I thank you for answering that. So if you could spend the day in somebody else's shoes, who would it be and why? And by the way, mine are a size 12. 6.
Who would I spend a day in their shoes? That's a very tricky one, actually. There's loads of people, is the truth, isn't there, really? There's loads of people that you admire, who you just think, you know, what is living your life like, really.
Yeah.
So I suppose as somebody every day who I think, oh, I wonder what it's like to live your life. And I actually think, you know, it's an important way of thinking, isn't it? Because the lives we lead aren't, you know, aren't the be all and end all, really. So I'm not sure I've got a specific person to tell you, but I think, you know, most days I think I wonder what it's like to live your life. And actually that's, you know, it's obviously an important part of being empathetic with people, isn't it? But
mine is, I'll let you know mine while you're thinking. Mine is Alicia Dixon from Britain's Got Talent. The reason is because she's just appeared in the Tresemme advert, and I really want to know if she uses Tresemme.
That's as good a reason as any, isn't it, really? I think. I'll tell you what, actually, I actually had last year, back in October time, I think it was, I actually interviewed Michael Cashman about his new book, one of them. And
that was for Pride, wasn't it?
Yeah. And it's a brilliant book, so if anyone hasn't read it, you definitely should. And anyway, we have a small connection, which is that when I lived in London, I lived very near to where he lives in London. Not that I didn't know him, I didn't know in that context anyway. Anyway, and I read the book, and I remember thinking what an extraordinary life that he had led, really, being at the front of many of the kind of battles we were talking about a little bit earlier, really. And I think it's really important to kind of, you know, celebrate those people who've fought the battles for us, really. So.
Yeah. So if you had a magic wand for a day, and you could enact one policy to help the LGBT plus community, what would it be?
I think we need to do more in relation to full trans equality. So I think, you know, I would like us to see the devolution to Wales of the GRAs, that we could bring forward proper progressive reform. So I think that would be, you know, pretty near the top of my list, really. I actually also think that it's not something we could do in the Senate particularly, but that's not really what you're asking me. It's a magic wand.
Yeah.
I think, you know, we are seeing an increase in terms of hate crime still, for all parts of the LGBT communities, really. And, you know, it's just gut-wrenchingly shocking that is still the case. So if I had a magic wand, that would be somewhere that I'd choose to wave it.
That's good. So, question: who is the most famous person you've met since being involved with politics? Obviously, apart from me.
Oh well, you've taken the words right out of my mouth. The most famous person I have met since I became involved in politics, since I was elected, at least, I probably can't remember before that in terms of all, you know, ever, but definitely Hillary Clinton. And she gave me some dating advice. I sat next to her at a little dinner thing, and I was only sat next to her for about half an hour. And she said, and I said, well, I really applaud what you've said about LGBT rights. I obviously support you 100%. I happen to be, you know, out gay member of the Welsh cabinet, and she was very interested in that. And she said to me, do you have I would do the accent at this point normally, but I won't for this purpose. She said, it's not very good. She said, do you have a partner? And I said, no. And then she proceeded to give me genuine dating advice. So, but seriously, yeah, she's probably the most famous, definitely the most famous politician I've met since I.
Did she go around like the Senedd often? Because Hannah's most famous person as well was to meet her. I was like, has everyone met her?
She's always knocking around the Senedd, honestly. Yeah.
So we've got some questions in from. So I'm going to pause my questions for now. Okay. I'll ask some questions that have come in from our viewers.
Yeah.
So Matthew asks, if you were First Minister, is there anything that you would do differently currently for the COVID situation?
Gosh, well, I think the current First Minister is doing an outstanding job in relation to the COVID situation. And I think probably the things I would do differently are the things that anybody would do differently after a year's worth of experience, really. So, you know, hindsight is amazing, isn't it, really? So clearly there are things that we would do differently, but I'm sure that's true of anybody really. So
Yeah. Sylvia Jones says, diolch yn fawr, Jeremy. So there's my Welsh there. What do you think we as LGBT plus people have lost due to not being part of the EU? My partner, Alyssa, and I went to Brussels in 2019. We met Jackie Jones, MEP, and almost met you. Declared for Europe. Alison, sorry, I can't read his writing. Not Alicia.
What are we most likely to lose? Well, I mean, we will lose the things that that anybody will lose, which are very significant things. But in terms of LGBT people specifically, I am very, very, very concerned about what Brexit represents. So, not necessarily the fact of being outside the European Union, but what it means in a larger political sense, really.
Yeah.
Because, I think it goes hand in hand with a set of values which are not values which are welcoming to the LGBT community. So the most obvious example, I think, is we have to be extremely watchful about what happens to human rights in the UK. Obviously, we know there's an ambition on the part of the Tory government to weaken them, basically. We've already lost a whole swathe of them by coming out of the European Union.
Mm.
And I just think we've got to be absolutely on our guard because, because we're now outside the EU, they'll be part of a culture of trying to weaken human rights. And, we are absolutely committed as a Welsh Labour Party to advancing human rights for all, obviously including LGBT people, but for all people in Wales. And I really think that we've got to keep a very, very watchful eye on that.
Yeah.
I think that's a big risk.
So we've had a question from Josh Green. He says, with the manifesto news about the pursuit to devolve GR, will there be a push for an NHS Wales gender service for under 18s?
Well, I think the step forward that we've done in the last Senedd is, and thanks to Vaughan Gething for this, to press for the introduction of the service at all, if you like. Is there further to go? There definitely is. Is there other improvements which the service needs to make? Of course. I know that there's a concern around waiting times. Obviously, know there's a concern around young people's access to the service. Yeah. And there have been concerns in the past about engagement with the trans community in designing the service, if you like. So all of those things are things to learn from. But I think there is a really strong foundation in what we have already achieved for us to build on and refine and improve. And I hope we will be able to do that in conjunction, obviously, with our trans.
Yeah. So we have had a question in from Mark Lewis, and it is a snog, marry, avoid question.
Okay.
So answer, the three options are available to you. You might find your partner here. You've got Boris Johnson.
I didn't catch that.
Or Michael Gove.
I didn't catch the names, Opal, sorry. Can you say them again?
Boris Johnson, Gavin Williamson, or Michael Gove?
Gavin Henson?
Williamson.
Oh, damn. I thought you were going to give me Gavin Henson for a second. Boris Johnson, Gavin Williamson, and Michael Gove. Is this one of the questions I cannot answer?
If you want to not answer it, that's fine.
They're all in the same category, basically. And it's not snog.
And they'd all be in my avoid category as well. So going back, are there any points in our history as well, in our history that you think have inspired you to want to fight for further equality?
Yes. Just say one thing, really. So I hope to continue to be the member of the Senedd for Neath, and in Neath constituency is the village of Banwen, which anybody who's seen the film Pride will know is the setting for the film where the events occurred. And I was able to speak at an event in the hall, the Man's Welfare Hall in Onllwyn, probably 2 years, maybe 3 years ago at this point, which is where the events are set. And for that evening, the group of LGBT lesbians and gay support minors group came down to Onllwyn to help celebrate the evening as well. And it made me think a lot about our comparatively recent history, obviously, and what we learn from that and what that should inspire us to do. And the thing that I learned, I think, was that we can draw, we can be too quick to draw conclusions that we're different, we're all different. If you like, we are all different, obviously. But in that film and in the true story that it represents, and in that evening that I was speaking at, you had a really strong sense of different communities, learning from each other really effectively. And obviously some people belonging to both communities. And in a way, I sort of still feel in my own life really that, I spent quite a long time living in London for about 20 years, but essentially my experience was the experience of a young gay kid growing up in the South Wales Valley. So, there's a kind of complex mix in that story for me personally on a kind of emotional level. Anyway, the point I was making was there are always allies. There are always allies. And our job is to be the allies to others who still need us to fight for them. And I've mentioned our trans communities as one of those groups of people, but there are others. But we also need to look to others to be allies to us. And I think that idea is incredibly powerful. And we should, we need to build on that politically, but also in our daily lives as well. It's not just about politics; it's about how we live our lives.
Yeah, it's that Pride film as well is such an inspiring film, and the story behind it is like I never ever before have cried at a film. I watched that and I like in floods, and it's like probably one of the only, there's like one other film that I've cried at previously since then, but every time I watch it I was like oh my god, this is amazing. I think we had before Pride in Pride Cymru, we had some of the members from that as well at the march, at the parade, and it was just absolutely amazing to have that.
I'd actually had the experience when I was at school of going in the minibus when it was actually the minibus, because a friend of mine who's now passed away, Dr. Howell Francis, who's the Member of Parliament for Aberafon, was essentially the link between the miners and before Di Donovan, and with Di Donovan, between the miners and the lesbians and gays, as they were called then. So anyway, it's also a very personal story in many ways.
Yeah, that's a claim to fame. I've been in the minibus. I love it. So I want to know as well, obviously, at the moment we are in mid-election season. How's the campaign going?
Well, it's hard to know is the honest answer, because you don't, it's not like knocking on a door and getting chatting to people every day. So the campaign in Neath, I think, is going positively. There's lots of people involved and volunteering, lots of people getting up leaflets. That's all very, very positive. And when we're speaking to people on the phone, we're getting pretty good responses. So that's very positive as well. But, there's obviously a job of work across Wales, isn't there? We've seen some polls which are good for us and polls which are not good for us. So, every single vote we've got a bloody fight for, basically.
Yeah. And are you on the phone, on dialogue? Are you on there making some calls?
Yeah, I actually had a session just before this, which Josh, who asked the question earlier, was at, and I thank him for that. We had an hour's worth of dialogue just before starting this discussion tonight, and I had a really, really good response personally. I had about 50% of people were saying they're going to vote Labour. So, other days are not as good as that, obviously. But the really difficult thing is, to be honest, I'm sure anybody who's watching this who has ever campaigned, which is probably most people, if not everybody, you get so much of the energy and the buzz and the drive and the stuff that keeps you going every day from the experience of knocking on the doors or chatting to people in the street during the campaign. And it's just very odd not having that, really, and trying to sort of create that sense of, buzz, if you like, is a real challenge without it. But I've got a good team, and I've got a really good office team, Vicky, Rachel, and Leo, who are fantastic, and they're helping as well with the broader campaign. So yeah.
Oh, with that dialogue, it's a shame it's not video either, because I sit there like this, ringing people, going, "Hello, how are we?" And they just like that. Who's this?
That is an idea. That is a very, very good idea.
We'll move that on.
It should be a video option, like face dialogue or something. It should be called.
Can you imagine? So we have another question in. This was emailed in to us. So the government being the first in the UK, with the Welsh Government being the first in the UK to commit to ending new transmissions of HIV by 2030, will Labour commit to publishing a HIV action plan before this year is out, provide continued funding of the successful national HIV and STI postal test scheming, provide adequate funding for Wales-wide HIV testing week, expand PrEP availability and create a HIV public health campaign to inform and to combat HIV stigma. Sorry, that was a mouthful for me.
That definitely all sounds like things we should be doing. And I think that, whoever is the health minister in the new government will obviously want to look at all of that, I would think. But I do again want to pay tribute to Vaughan for his pioneering in terms of making sure that PrEP has become available in Wales on the NHS, and I think that's been fantastic. But I think the challenges which you describe in your question are real challenges which we need to, we obviously need to get to grips with in the way that you're describing.
That's it. Because obviously we've got faster cities here in Cardiff. Yeah. It'd be nice to get that faster Wales and get it across the whole of Wales. So Josh has sent in another question. So what is the plan going forward for teacher training for teachers to deliver inclusive relationships and sexuality education? Yeah. That you're very passionate and dedicated to this. Yeah. I wish I had this education when I was in school.
Yes. Okay, so this is really important because it's fundamental to how it's going to be delivered. So there's a lot of work already going on to kind of co-design, if you like, the curriculum for RSE to make it obviously age appropriate and inclusive in the way that we want. So that is all happening. I think there's obviously areas, aren't there, where we will all know, I suppose, that the quality of that experience is going to vary significantly, probably based partly on the individual, if I can just be blunt about it, comfort level of teachers in engaging on the full range of diversity issues in an RSE context, obviously, and getting teachers comfortable, if you like, with how to address issues, the language to use, how to engage with people, which often will come from a place of anxiety and fear of getting things wrong rather than a place of prejudice. I mean, generally speaking, it'll come from a place of not quite sure how to do it rather than don't think it should be done. So there's a job of work to be done around that. I do think again that there are some parts of the RSE curriculum which should be more challenging for teachers generally, but so that work is underway. The new curriculum starts, I think, next year. Yeah, so there's sort of years worth of extra work to do around that, basically. So Stonewall, I just do want to say really that Stonewall have done a fantastic job on behalf of the Welsh Government to work with teachers in schools. Yeah. Obviously not on the new curriculum yet, but on getting teachers universally, if you like, or spreading the best practice about how to engage with LGBT pupils.
Sorry, the reason I was laughing is Zach Harvey has sent a question in.
I've never heard of Zach Harvey.
He works for the Welsh Government. I did one of these. He asked if me and Hannah would do a duet at the end. And he's asked do a duet at the end. Tell you what, Zach, if you put £20 in my PayPal, as soon as lockdown's over, me and Jeremy, I will buy the first drink. Me and Jeremy will have a vodka and a tequila rose, and we'll do a cabaret song for you then.
Definitely. I'm definitely for
that. So going on there, obviously today, Welsh Labour has announced its manifesto commitments. Can you tell us more about the pledges towards the LGBT community in that, please?
Yes, absolutely. So there are some pretty good pledges, I think. We've got commitments around the hate crime agenda, which I mentioned earlier. I think we've got some strong commitments in relation to aspects which I think are less often discussed, really. So we've got some interesting proposals around an equalities legal service, for example, to work with LGBT people around discriminatory workplace practices. We've got some really good stuff around exploring legislation to address pay gaps based on protected characteristics, including obviously sexual orientation. And I think those sorts of things don't actually get as much focus perhaps in our discussions as campaigners as they might, but I think they have the potential at least to be quite transformative. We've also said that we will ban all aspects of LGBTQ plus conversion therapy, which we have powers over in Wales. It's because of the way our devolution settlement works, unfortunately, it's pretty complex. So everything that we have powers over, we will make sure that they are used in a way which prevents conversion therapy from happening. And where we don't have those powers, we will seek the devolution of those powers. So there's a kind of whole approach. And as I mentioned briefly earlier as well, we'll also seek the devolution of the GRA. Now, obviously that isn't something which is within our gift, but we will set that as an objective for ourselves, and we will work towards that, obviously. And if we have a Labour government after the next general election, which we all wish we do, I'm sure we'll find that much easier. And there's also a proposal in the manifesto to create a Wales-wide Pride finance fund, effectively, which will support prides in all parts of Wales. Obviously, the Welsh Government has already provided some funding to prides, but to make it a kind of systematic thing across Wales, and to appoint a kind of pride coordinator to support and involve ourselves as a government in those campaigns. So a kind of range of things, really.
That's really interesting about the pride thing, because I think prides are so important to everybody. So it does bring us on to our next question, which is, so have you supported any prides, and what prides have you been involved with?
I've been involved in prides in Llanelli, in Swansea, in Cardiff. Where else have I been? I've been to prides obviously outside Wales as well, so I've been to prides in London and in Manchester. So yeah, I've been to a number of prides. But I was very honoured to speak at Pride Cymru. I think it was 3-4 years ago, when we'd just been elected, and we had a stage full of Welsh Labour politicians, either who were themselves LGBT or who were allies, and I felt that was a very, very kind of powerful signal of our support as a party for LGBT communities. And I was very disappointed to see that year, at least, it wasn't reflected by seeing other political parties there. I mean, actually the plan was originally to have all elected politicians in the Senedd on the stage, but I think I'm right in saying that the only ones of us there in Pride were Welsh Labour, which, I'm very pleased that there was a strong Welsh Labour showing, but I found it very disappointing that was, only Welsh Labour, if you like.
You are right in saying that, because I was the person stood at the end of the stage going, right, we need this person now. Where are they? They're not here. They should have been.
Okay, right.
That was me in my alter ego. So, but yeah, you are right. It was just Welsh Labour that was there, which was disappointing, but it is what it is.
Yeah, but to be fair, it hasn't been like that since, I don't think. But it was very stark, I think.
Yeah. So, what? How have you supported the LGBT plus community within your constituency?
Well, I think, I suppose by being visible, really. I've been very clear about my support for an LGBT inclusive curriculum, and in particular, when I've gone into schools, I've been very clear about that. And always in that context, you get young LGBT people saying, thank you, that's fantastic, we're really pleased the government is doing that. So in that way, I think in a kind of a practical way, and that is sometimes quite difficult, obviously, going into a school setting and doing that, because it's not something which is yet part of the curriculum, but I've tried to do that whenever I've had the opportunity, really.
That's good. We've had another message from Zach Harvey. He said, what's the link to my PayPal? Now, Zach, I shouldn't really be doing this. However, because I'm not here for a fee, you can visit paypal.me/Opal Fruits and donate whatever you want to. Thank you. Anyway, Jeremy, I just want to say it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you this evening. I was saying before, I don't think I've had the pleasure of meeting you either like this or as my boy self, and it's been wonderful speaking to you. So thank you for coming on. Good luck with the campaign, and we hope on May the 6th that you will be back in the Senedd, where you belong.
Thank you, Opal, and thanks for a lovely chat. I've really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Wonderful. So from this, I've taken away that you're a really nice guy, and that we're going to do karaoke and have some vodka at some point.
That's on my action list too.
So anyway, thank you for watching as well, boys and girls at home. Don't forget, we do these very frequently. I'm not sure what the next one is because they haven't told me yet. But as soon as we have more information, we'll send that out to you via our mailing list. So tune in for that because I'm sure it'll be special. But until then, thank you, everybody, and we'll see you all soon. Ta-ra.